thanks so much for joining us. And Kat, thank you so much for coming on. Excited?
Yeah, my pleasure. And I'm really excited. I think it's nice to be, I wouldn't even say the other side of a webinar, but given the opportunity we've had to engage in so many learning opportunities, I've just been watching and learning. So I'm really excited to engage in more conversation.
Brilliant. Yeah, we're really excited to hear your perspective today. Something that we talk a lot about as coaches. It's almost a buzzword at the minute in terms of this philosophy word, but it's very, very interesting. The more like I keep saying it's a buzzword, and then I always ask people about it. So I was interested to kind of link yours today to the training process. And of course, the first question is, how would you describe your philosophy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess more of it will come out in a couple of slides, but I just want to put a disclaimer out there. I'm this kid from this little surf town that's probably made famous by a 1991 movie called Point Break with Keanu and Patrick. So by no means I'm an expert, but happy to share some of my thoughts, experiences that I've had along the way.
Culture of the country is always an interesting part whenever you take in, I mean, what aspects of, I suppose, with the US culture and with the British culture, we're kind of acclaimed to how we grew up with the game, and in the UK, in the US, we say the culture is about winning quite a lot. In Ireland, it's about kind of love of the game. It's kind of ingrained in you, that 24/7 feeling. I mean, how is it in Australia with, I suppose, Aussie rules, those other sports as well?
Yeah, well, I guess you just touched on that point right there. It's about, in Australia, we're so lucky. We're called the lucky country for a reason, and I think that's because in a sport context, we've got freedom of choice. So we've got professional sports here: AFL, rugby league, rugby union, what I call football, soccer. Obviously, there's netball, hockey, all of these, I guess, grand sports. And during, I guess, my era of growing up, we had the Olympics in 2000. So we had such a snapshot of all of these prominent sports around the world. So for me, I guess our culture is impacted by our ability to have choice. And I think outside of sport now, and not to go into it too much, is again that choice of, well, back in the day you had two choices: you went outside, you played with your friends, or you were dragged inside to have your dinner. That was basically what you did growing up. Now it's Netflix, it's movies. Yes, you have training, but you've got piano, you've got swimming, you've got tutors, you've got extra classes, you've got all these pressures, but you've also got all of this choice as well. So young kids do have choice. Now, there's pros and cons in that. Being in the football bubble, you want to develop that culture, but also with that, I guess, opportunity of choice and experience of other sports, we know that can contribute to the development of better footballers long term. So you spoke about winning in the UK and the US. I think Australia's really had that underdog fight mentality, and that really, I guess, is embedded within some of our football curriculum and philosophy as well.
Brilliant. Do you want to start in and then and look at yours a little closer?
Yeah, absolutely. So let us know that you've got that up on the screen.
Yeah, we've got it up. We can see it.
Fantastic. So I guess my journey's been, I guess, one of informal and formal experiences through the coaching curriculum, our advanced pathway here in Australia. And obviously you learn so much from other coaches, experiences like these, and working with other players. So I've been fortunate being in the W League that we do get, I guess, an influx of international players every year, and I'm always having conversations and trying to work out, you know, what's their experience of football and what could I bring into my own philosophy and vision for the game. But as it stands now, we know that, you know, our philosophy should be evolving, and you know, just over the last couple of weeks, I'm always adding bits and pieces, but this is where it stands at the moment. for me, there's three key pillars, and those you can see there on the screen, and you can substitute the word vision for your culture or your environment, which we'll get into. So participation, performance, and progression for me are really key pillars to, I guess, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is to make better footballers. So just digging a little bit deeper into the culture, the environment that I try to create, whether that be what we call a skill acquisition program, a SAP program for under 12s, or whether that's within a national team set up with the junior Matildas. For me, it's looking at these three key areas, and to keep it nice and simple for everyone, it's 3 Ps. So participation, progression, and performance. And you can see some of the subcategories within that. But moving on, we'll dig a little deeper into what that means. So nobody will learn or develop in an environment that's not enjoyable. And that's been my experience also coming from an education background. So a few key points that I find about my environment is, am I creating participation for all the participants, for all the players and coaches, staff, supporters, parents, and like that? Am I meeting the intrinsic needs of the players? Am I providing them with an opportunity to be empowered? Am I allowing them to feel valued in their environment? Do they feel engaged? And you spoke about buzzwords before. It might be, you substitute that with buy-in. Are they engaged, or do they buy into, I guess, the playing way, the Australian way, the Matildas way, the Alamein FC way? Are they feeling a connectedness to the philosophy, the team? And like in any, I guess, environment, the players need to have an opportunity to learn. They need to have the confidence to fail. And that needs to happen on the daily for them to, I guess, move into that next phase, which is progression. So this whole webinar, as we're talking before, Gary, is, I guess, how do we get from this philosophy right through to it being, I guess, brought to life on the park? So with your long-term athlete development, again, it's what purpose does this session have to the overall development of the player, or how is this meeting the objective of meeting some of our performance indicators? So whatever environment you're in, you can really adapt this, I guess, analogy of long-term athlete development, that it brings back to clearly defines objectives within your program. There's no better time than right now to talk about certainty and how important that is to, I guess, a human need. And I think that's, relevant to feedback as well. So players in the environments that I've been fortunate to work in, they're wanting to get better. And the way that I hope to enable that is by providing feedback. So that, I guess, gives a feeling of certainty to a certain player, whether that's subjective or objective feedback, that they are getting better. So making sure I'm working towards some frameworks that allows players to get that feedback, whether that be video or data, or just some verbal feedback, whether that's more in a formal or an informal setting. I think that's really important within your overall environment to build your culture. And lastly there, it's the pathway. And like I said, working in environments where players are wanting to get better and they're on this, I guess, journey of becoming full-time professional players or representing their country, is they want to know that, I guess, they're being molded or nurtured, become, I guess, in my current context, senior players to play in the senior team, or to put it more generally, from a, I guess, underpinning national or state-based competition into what is the W League here in Australia. So creating a environment which players are very clear and have that I guess clarity around what their pathway is and what we're trying to achieve in that particular environment. Last one, and being performance. So at the end of the day, whether you're in results-driven business or whether you're about developing players and selling them off and getting a transfer fee, or I guess you're set particular targets to get so many players into a senior team or into the national team, for example, these are really key, I guess, around how do I get players to perform to the best of their ability, or how do I get the best out of them. So for me, and if you're looking at the pyramid in the top, what's my right-hand corner, either your foundation is the mentality. I guess you're not going to get the execution of actions or players to have that clarity if they don't have the right mentality or the attitude towards the game themselves, the process of development. So there's a few performance focus areas you can see there about, do they have the initial driver of commitment to their craft, to football? And within that, I guess, what are a few things that within their environment really stabilize their performance? So whether that's communication, I guess their cognitive ability of concentration, or their emotional control, as it is there, sort of linking to their ability to control their emotions, and just realizing this is more about performance rather than development. And at the end of the day, I think if you have that belief, and sorry to use all these buzzwords, but it is there in terms of what drives optimal performance, and that is the player's belief or their confidence that they can actually do it, or they believe that they can. Again, just relevant to the performance phase is the execution of the action. So as an athlete, can they actually execute the demands? Do they have, I guess, the conditioning to, I guess, prevent the injuries and build that capacity, whether that be strength, power, aerobic, anaerobic, whatever that might be as an athlete. And then I guess getting down to the technical, tactical side of the game, it's, I guess, the clarity that the player has, that they understand within a structured framework and a playing style what their roles and responsibilities are. So I guess in an environment, from my philosophy, that's what I'm trying to create. How do we actually bring that to life? How do we, I guess, move that, some great buzzwords in there, and it looks all great on a piece of paper, but how do we move that to the pitch? And I'm very process driven, very methodical, and this is what I found that works for me, and it may or may not for others. That we actually know the game and the four main moments. For me, I really drive key principles within the game, and then you can dig a little deeper into the team tasks and the objectives. So when it comes to designing a session plan, or really, I guess, evaluating performances, these are the things that I'm looking at. So I think it's probably quite consistent around the world in the game that, for me, the four moments of the game, you have the ball, you don't have the ball, and you're trying to win it back or get it back and do something with it from there. So I've sort of broken up the game into how I'd like to see it played into these 7 areas, or I guess key principles. And going from left to right, you've got those in possession, in green, and then working towards your both transition moments in blue, yellow and blue, and then obviously defensive principles in red. So call them what you want. They're probably quite consistent around the world, whether counter is direct play, or over the top second ball kind of thing, or construct and control, it's play like Barcelona. So I think they're quite familiar around the world. just a couple of slides back, I spoke about clarity, and that being really important to, I guess, the performance of a player. So for me, I look at this simplistic explanation of my model being in a cycle, and it kind of, I guess, acts as a hierarchy of decision making. So when we actually have the ball, can we counter quickly? And we'll get to it in a minute, and there's a few sort of sub principles under each one. So going around, I guess, clockwise, if we have the ball, what can we do with it? If we lose the ball, what's our immediate sort of responsibility of our players to when, I guess, moments in the game change? I guess there's a guiding principle and I guess an ease of making decisions for the players, so that there should be, hopefully, everyone on the same page, working together. In designing my sessions, like I was mentioning before, each sort of key principle has a team task within it. So you can see there we're looking at sort of countering quickly. That was one of the first ones. If we win the ball, can we go forward quickly? That might be whether that's dribbling, or you can see there through quick combination play. So the team task is there for me. The team outcomes are clearly defined, and then it gets down to, I guess, the nitty gritty. So I know it's quite consistent. I guess the 4 quadrants of technical, tactical, physical, and psychological are there, and that for me makes up the session. So within my actual planning, whether it's talking to my strength and conditioning coach, can you make sure the players are prepared physically, psychologically? How have we prepared the players to, like I said, buy in, feel valued? Have they been welcomed to the session? Do they feel a part of it? Have they been involved in some kind of decision making throughout the week? Do they feel empowered? And I guess a few other non-negotiables are in there, like building your culture, the work ethic, and there's many others that I won't get into right now. But that makes up, I guess, the session. So we spoke, I guess, before about the importance of a player and their performance comes down to, I guess, three aspects. And you'll see the link in a second here, that there's the player, that technically, tactically, they have to be astute in the game. That's the football talk. There needs to be the athlete. They need to be robust, agile, be able to execute certain actions. And then there's the person. I guess we spoke about those earlier needs of a person, to really make them feel part of something, and to create, I guess, the right mentality. Does that then lead to, the byproduct of confidence, which I guess is a key driver of high performance? So within the sessions, these are the things that I'm trying to achieve. Again, it kind of links back to that overarching philosophy. And again, that link to the clarity is about the player. Do they understand their roles and responsibilities? The execution of actions, that links back to the athlete. Can they, or do they have the capacity to deliver on those actions? And the mentality, do they have the confidence, the belief, the drive, the commitment to do the things that we need them to do within that team environment, or in fact do the things they need to do as an individual to be better than what they were yesterday? I guess just to sum up a little bit, Gary, you sort of asked about what are the non-negotiables, and sort of how do I reflect on the sessions. It's for me, I can say I had the greatest session and that was great, everything went well, but it's really defined by the impact it has on the player. And I specifically write player rather than the team. It's more about, I guess, how does that individual then get better? That then contributes to the overall performance of the team. So if I can make each individual player better, then that I guess the byproduct of that is the team performance naturally should progress and develop. Subjectively, objectively, I know you've worked heavily in sort of data as well, that there are, I guess, ways and metrics we can use specifically, I guess, in an analysis sense, and also in, I guess, the athletic performance sense, that we're looking at how they're performing, but also subjectively, how can we check the understanding? And again, within these three key areas, I might be just wanting to check in, did that player feel like they had opportunities or they enjoyed the session? Did I give that player some feedback? Were they engaged in the session? Or is that player showing some progression in their physical data? Are they tracking along, I guess, long-term athlete development? Am I sensing a commitment and drive? Where is this player at mentally? Are there issues at home, work, studying? What's happening, I guess, in their personal life that may be impacting on their performance? I guess what's really prevalent now, I guess you need your Michael Jordan to your Dennis Rodman. I mean, someone there to look after your players and making sure that when they need to, they've got the support there, and someone to bring their head back into the game as well. So I guess that's probably a really quick iceberg approach, just I guess what you can see on the top of how I put together sessions from, I guess, my overarching philosophy. So I'm sure it sparked many questions, and happy to take any or dive in a little deeper into any of those aspects.
Top class. Thanks, Kat. That was really, really interesting. So we've got a few questions, and coaches, if you want to start putting your questions on now, we can get to them. They're starting to come flying in. But before we start, I've got one or two for you. So this empowerment process that you talk about before it, again, we mention it a lot as coaches. I mean, what are some things that you do to try to facilitate that?
Yeah, and I'll give you a real practical example. Being in lockdown here in Australia, I guess return to football is imminent, but how do we, I guess, when I talk about empowerment, there's right now, and I guess it might be prevalent a little bit more in female football as well, and stealing a bit of Simon Semek as well, is that why? That they need to have that opportunity to perhaps be in control of their destiny, be empowered to make those decisions, and I think that makes them accountable, a little bit more accountable and responsible for their actions, and I think that then contributes. It's all a cycle. Then contributes to their commitment. How does it? If they're responsible for making that decision, then surely that means that there's commitment, and that's a driver. So I guess it allows them to be involved in the bigger picture, because it's simple to say we want to win the championship. Okay, 12 teams in the competition, 12 teams are trying to do the same thing. So what makes our journey different to anyone else's? What is it about the 20 players in this squad that is going to win a championship? So you tell me, you make the decisions, how we're going to do this. So is that because we're a team that will be we'll have the top goal scorer in the league, we'll have the most shutouts in the competition? What is it about our performances that will define, I guess, who we are? And again, that connects back to, I guess, the buy-in, the culture. So I think a lot of, and I guess it's, without using too many fluffy words, because obviously it's the behaviours of people that sort of define, I guess, habits and outcomes within environments, is that needs to be there before you're winning anything. find me a team that would win the championship without, I guess, behaviours or habits within that come naturally, that are innate to athletes, that have contribute to performance.
Yeah, really interesting, because one thing I pick up on is we talk, and I think we do it way too often over here in our culture, is we talk about these buzzwords in the collective, the engagement, the commitment, the passion. But what I picked up on yours was you're actually, it's individual driven, it's individual, and then that will incorporate to the collective. So it's not just like, say, buzzwords do become buzzwords if they're just thrown around too often, but it seems to be yours is individually driven.
Yeah, and like probably many people around the world, especially in the States at the moment, if they're watching the Netflix documentary, The Last Stand with Michael Jordan, it's in the last episode that I was just watching. He spoke about there's no I in team, and his immediate sort of comeback was, yeah, but there is in win. Now, if we've got a common collective that we want to win a championship, and that's I guess the level of football that I'm coaching in currently, then it has to be on the individual. Now, I'm not saying that there's one or two players that are going to win you a championship, but individually, if you're better than what you were yesterday and you're driven and committed to getting better, then we have a chance of winning. So it does come from the individual.
And I would suggest that the process of progression then improves the participation, because it's growth then, right? So it's
yeah, 100%. So I guess you're fortunate because where I'm coaching it, and it's probably conversely to maybe a school's environment where sport might be mandatory for every student, and they don't want to be there, but they have to be there. I'm fortunate that it's a choice for these athletes and these players to be there. So I think, well, hopefully, and I guess it's key to whether you call it coaching style, philosophy, or leadership, that there is authenticity, there is integrity, and there is clarity in what they're walking into, because they do have a choice to go to another team. But if they want to be within this environment, this is what they're getting.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much. I got to take questions here, but the last thing I'll say is that I find it really interesting that you embrace the choice, but as something that you use to improve the experience of the players. But so often over here you hear, and that's not to say yours is better than ours, but so often over here you hear that choice is a bad thing, either from A, they've too much selection with clubs, or B, they've got too many different sports to play. But reality, we should be using that to say, like, all right, well, in order to retain talent, we have to improve our processes.
100%. And I guess in female football, and I guess the current landscape here, and this shift of, I guess, amateur to semi-professional, there's a change in whether it's intrinsic needs of the athlete, was we love playing the game. It's an outlet, it's physical activity, it's social, to now it's actually, it pays my rent and it puts food on the table. So when you get down to it, I need to know if that's the buy-in of that particular player is because they're playing for money. It, I guess, provides them a lifestyle that they want. They can have their smashed avocado every weekend at $26.50, or it's this aspiring 15-year-old that is doughy-eyed, is not interested, or wouldn't even contemplate, asking for money. But that's what they're there for. So for me to get the best out of them, and for me to create that high-performing, winning culture, I need to know that, and I need to, I guess, approach that individual with that in mind.
Just on that, so that's always the reality of coaching, where people are at. And I'll start questions here. Sarah Dolan's come in with, a real reality check that we're all experiencing, I suppose, at every level. I had this yesterday on a webinar as well. Create a session where half the team, depends on the level, half the team have no interest in development, and then the other half are striving for growth in the game. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I guess I was saying before, I'm quite fortunate that I've probably worked more so in these, I guess, elective environments, whether it be a talented player program, a skill acquisition program, where along the way the players have been identified or they've had to trial to get into the program. The other side of that, working in education, we do actually go into primary school. So we are, I guess, faced with kids that don't want to play. And I go back to that participation. What is it that makes you want to participate in something? So it's 9 o'clock at night here in Australia, or 20 to 10. Why are people staying up and watching this? Or conversely, in the States or the UK, they'd be going, having their breakfast or going out for an afternoon coffee. It's because they're engaged in it. They got value from it. I guess they've got some enjoyment, and that goes down to back to the soccer scenario, is that if a player's not enjoying their environment, of course they're not going to want to develop or get better. Either the challenge within that environment is subpar or too much, so it actually discourages the player. So for me, it's, I guess, younger kids, they want to have fun, so allow them to, I guess, just be a sponge within that, I guess, hidden learning environment. I guess we're so programmed through coach education, I think, to always coach. But at the same time, we always talk about this culture of we develop players because, or, there were great players coming through a golden generation because they played in the street. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, for sure. Very interesting. Chris McLaughlin. Chris has asked a few questions. I'll pick out one here because I'm fascinated by this one. Your preference of giving the feedback after sessions. When do you, I suppose, gauge? Is it immediate? Is it verbal, player-led, cooling off period? How does that process work?
There's a few frameworks that I kind of work with, and it's whatever context it's in. It might be a collective of athletes or players. It might be to an individual. But I'll just preface it by saying that errors will keep occurring unless they're given the information to change their behaviour. So I think it's important to give immediate feedback. So you might be fortunate in a full-time environment where you've got players for 5-6 hours of the day that you can have your session. They've got their pre-act, they've got their gym, double session, they come in, preview, review, you can give that kind of feedback. When you maybe have 2 contacts a week and a game on the weekend, it's a little bit different. But I think it's important that whatever framework, and I'll go back to whether it's in this situation, this was your behaviour, this is what happened, that's the impact it had, or collectively as a team, this is what worked well, this is what we can do even better. So I guess there's a little bit of priming in there as well, that given that last example, it's about identifying, okay, we did this, it's a positive, but even better if we could do this, or talking to the individual, you would frame that a little differently. I liked how you do this, but have you tried this? So just framing and priming around the positives, I think, is going to have a greater impact. But I guess the point about trying to give immediate feedback, different, I guess, in terms of implicit and explicit learning, whether you're working with top-level athletes that you need to get your point across there, and then you've got a game in, it's your -1, we need to win this game, or I'm getting sacked, versus, your young age groups that are developing that skill acquisition, that they need to, I guess, experience failure and learn through repetition. So it does need to take into, I guess, your context in supplying that answer.
Saksham has asked, going back to your philosophy, was it something that, what was it more influenced by, research and through the academic or the experience and environments that you've been in?
Great question, and it's not an exciting answer. It's influenced by me. The biggest learning I gained from the recent pro diploma here through the AFC and Football Federation Australia was I can't be anyone other than myself. So my philosophy on football comes from my values and beliefs. Because you're not going to believe anything I say if I don't believe what I'm saying. So I guess my philosophy comes from my experience, my authentic self, and what has shaped me, whether that's through formative experiences. We talk about, family life, primary school, high school, relationships with parents and mentors. Of course, the formal pathways of research and, studying. So Bachelor of Education and an exercise science background. So that, again, has influenced my philosophy. But there's, I guess, for me, when you're developing your philosophy, it does come from your own values and beliefs. It needs to be authentic, and it's certainly, you'll be found out if you're looking for that cookie cutter approach from what you just watch on YouTube.
Max has asked about, back another buzzword we talk about is leadership. Back to the empowerment. When you have your leaders on your team and your captains, how do you help them grow as leaders?
Again, they need to be in a position where they're I guess confident to fail. I know that sounds probably a little bit backwards, but they need to have the confidence to fail, knowing that, I guess, the repercussions aren't, I guess, the end of the world. That they have the support to make those decisions, because at the end of the day, if they believe what they believe in, right or wrong, or they're adverse to a particular behaviour of a player and they need to step up, then it needs to come from their own values and beliefs. And I know I sort of touched on, again, for me in my environment, I want my athletes or the players to be their true authentic selves, and have the confidence to do that. So in identifying leaders, it's usually around giving them the confidence to be themselves, and not, I guess, predetermining what a captain is by a little C next to the name that you have to take, the pre-game talks. You have to be the one that yells and screams, or, you know what, I'm selecting you because you demonstrate the behaviours of a high performer. Okay, your habits are conducive of us developing each and every one of our players just by them identifying what you do, how you do it, and them knowing that, okay, that's going to help us win a football match.
Yeah, and that psychological safety, that permission to fail, that can happen at senior elite level, right? Like, that can be in those environments. It's not just for U10s, U12s. It can happen right up.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And that's where I think, as you go up that sort of age group and, amateur to professional football, from pros to international cap players, is that we think they sort of just turn into this athlete and this player, and that human child, fun, personality, character needs to be second to the athlete, the player. So I really, I guess, try and make a point and emphasis of putting the person first.
Brilliant. A couple of people have asked about your review process of yourself personally after training sessions.
I welcome feedback, good, bad, and ugly. I think that's really important. So I'm fortunate that I'm in a position that either I can, I guess, employ people of support. I can bring with me sort of assistants and strength and conditioning coaches, and I guess having people outside the game as well that I can bounce off. But very much welcoming the feedback, and I guess again, not only empowering players but empowering staff as well that I'm working with, that they have an opportunity to be confident, that they have a voice, their opinion and their knowledge, their experience is valued, because I want to know at the end of the day, I need to have an impact on the players, okay, to help them develop and to be better. I need to know what is, for example, right now, what is Gary's experience of me? I can have an idea and I could perceive that, but at the end of the day, I would have biases, I'd have preconceived ideas. At the end of the day, I need to hear or get that feedback from the individual, knowing what their experience is, rather than me, I guess, having my own opinion on what it should have been.
Oscar has asked, I'm going to adapt this question slightly. How do you balance between that, the non-negotiables, the things that are about you, that you said about I can only be me, those things, that how do you balance that with adapting, changing, creating?
That's human nature, I guess, is if I've got the question right here. At the end of the day, the environment it goes two ways. Either we're trying to put, I guess, square pegs in round holes, or ideally we need to adapt to our environment to get the best out of it. Now, I will only go as far as what my values and beliefs will allow me to, so I've got to hold that integrity. So I'm not afraid to, I guess, remove myself from environments that aren't conducive or aren't aligned to my own philosophy, values and beliefs, because there will always be that friction, and there will always be that resistance. So that flexibility and adaptability, yes, needs to happen. And I guess maybe we can frame that in conflict resolution and problem solving and communication, having all those skills to overcome those barriers within your environment without really changing who you are.
Brilliant. Okay, last couple. The psychological aspect, Lewis has asked about that there. How do you improve, I suppose, going back then from the individual to the collective? Is it from again, a sit down, isolated, or do you do everything in the session, or what's the balance between the both?
I guess it could go many ways. I think, I'll give you little sort of examples. So when a player arrives at training, there's research to suggest how, I guess, positive engagement and positive touch is to, I guess, the perception of a person's environment. So that's a high five, that's a fist pump, that's a handshake, a tap on the back to say, I've seen you, I know you're here. My worst nightmare is that I could put on the best session and think it's amazing, but I did not say hello to Gary and I did not say anything to him during my session. That's one of my nightmares. So in terms of, I guess, the psychology behind the players, whether that's individually or collectively, one, individually make sure I'm saying hello to all the players, whether that's a high five, hello, that little bit of banter. I'm a Man United fan, so if there's Liverpool fans out there, it's always asterisks, no championship, sorry guys. I guess that individual, connection with the person, and I say person purposely, not the player, as an individual. And then obviously collectively, we're looking at what's the biggest story to us winning the championship. What are we all about? It's commonly used now is, okay, what's our DNA? What makes us who we are? And I say who as insert team here. what makes us this team, and that's what we work on collectively. And I guess you go through that process of what do we believe in and what are our values, but really making sure on the daily that we're either celebrating those good habits which align to, I guess, our objectives, or I guess condemning, I guess, behaviours that go against and provide friction to, I guess, the overall objective.
Okay, last one from Chris. And looking at it from a macro, almost as a leader of a club and trying to build coaches, how do you suppose balance between putting out the curriculum or the philosophy, but also giving them room and freedom and ownership to move it in a way that is going to be in the right direction, but also in a way that they can grow?
Yeah, I guess the easiest one is that I guess the culture comes from the player, it comes from an individual. I think you can have posters on the wall and motivational quotes around. That's not your culture. Your culture is the behaviours that what happens on the day-to-day. How do people interact? What are the habits? What's that feel of the place? And that's driven by the people. Yes, I guess there's frameworks, processes, things in place that do perhaps, I guess, try and structure and guide a culture. But at the end of the day, it comes from people. So I'm not adverse to, I guess, tossing out some bad apples, because they do eventually ruin the whole bunch.
First class. Kat, thank you so much. This has been amazing. Really enjoyed this. Yeah. Well, I know we're going ready to get back on the pitch, but maybe we'll get you on soon and do round 2.
No worries. Looking forward to it. Thanks so much, everyone, for your questions. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for staying up late for us, Kat. Thank you. We'll talk soon and be safe.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right, cheers. Bye now.